How does a young boy from the remote village of Mushanga, who's never even seen a doctor, become a top diabetes expert in East Africa and beyond? Welcome to Doctors of the Baobab. On this podcast, we go beyond the white coat to get to know the doctors we admire and respect. Join us as we explore the stories behind the stethoscopes, uncovering the humanity behind the medical expertise. Whether it's navigating the complexities of patient care, overcoming obstacles, or advocating for change in healthcare systems, each episode promises to inspire, to educate, and to uplift. So sit back, relax, and prepare to embark on a journey of discovery with Doctors of the Baobab. Today's guest is Professor Silver Bahendeka from Uganda. Thanks to his stellar grades and a government bursary, he was propelled to Kampala for secondary school, where he chose to pursue medicine. Graduating from world-renowned Makerere University, he completed his internship under the esteemed Sister Veronica Cotta at St. Francis Hospital in Zambia, a place he calls home for over 40 years. Even amid the turmoil of the wars in the 1980s, Prof. Bandeka's determination did not waver. He earned a PhD in endocrinology from Trinity College of Dublin, and he returned to Uganda to establish a groundbreaking diabetes clinic, which now spearheads nationwide programs transforming diabetes care across the country and across the East Africa region. Learning from global leaders, Prof. Bandega further completed a fellowship in India and furthered his studies in global health at Trinity College. His relentless drive brought him Changing Diabetes in Children program to Uganda, and his research is paving the way for healthier futures. Prof. Silver Bahendeka is not just a doctor, he's a visionary, he's a trailblazer, and a force in the medical community. His unstoppable optimism and unwavering dedication ensure that his remarkable efforts will be felt and continue to revolutionize healthcare in Uganda and beyond. Prof. Silver Bahendeka, welcome to Doctors of the Baobab.
Thank you very much.
Now, usually we talk about one's fate being written in the stars, but yours was written in the sand. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, very interesting in that my home was near a parish, a Catholic parish institution. And as children, we used to move to the parish to teach the French and English priests the local language. And we were used to them, and whoever would come, that was our job, to teach them the local language. And in the process, actually, we also learned English pretty fast, well before we joined the ordinary school. Now, because it was so near, I used to go to the girls' school, which at that time was not allowed. Boys would go to the boys' school, and girls would go to the girls' school. But I used to follow my sister to the girls' school. So the teacher there then said I was getting a little older. I was about 4 then, and I should join the boys' school. But because we didn't have sufficient funds at home, and I knew it was going to be very difficult to tell my father I need some money to go to school. So I went to the priest I was teaching Runyankore, that's where the local language was, and told him I want to go to school. Then he says, "You really want to go to school?" I said, "Yes, and I already know how to read and write." He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "I can write my name down." That's the easiest, was to write in the sand. So I wrote my name down, and very clearly. So he went to the house, picked a piece of paper in a textbook, in an exercise book, gave it to me, says, "Tomorrow go to the boys' school and start. And that's how I started.
Wow. And could you take us through then the point at which you decide that you want to become a doctor once this opportunity for formal education had been presented to you? How do you start to consider medicine as a profession?
In reality, I don't think we chose missions right from the beginning. I think we used to look at excelling in class as the prime driver. And all we required was really get good marks and continue ahead. The purpose of going to school really was to pass. I didn't really look at the career. So it was to pass and go to good school. And that's what happened. After the primary school, I went to the secondary school of my choice, the best that was available in the area. And then from the secondary school, then we were told, I think you are good enough. You can apply for this school. And that's really what happened again. So we went to a secondary school. And then in the secondary school, again, there was really no choice except all we had to do was please make sure that you are the best in school. And that's how I ended up senior 5 doing biology, chemistry, physics, and subsidiary mathematics as my option because that's what I was given in higher schools, what we call higher secondary 1 and 2. That is pre-university entry. Now, once you are in a pre-university entry, then the options were either, if you had that choice, you either go for engineering or you go for veterinary or you go for agriculture or some related in that. And most of us in the class then looked at joining medicine. So that was the decision. In terms of choosing a career, I think it was being pushed by the school. And I don't think we even ever chose the career until we passed our senior 6 examinations. So when we passed, the whole class actually were, I think if I remember very correctly, were I think 16 and 14 of us went to Makerere University Medical School in that group. Half of my group, I think, is now in Boston at the time. And all of us, I must thank God, did very well in medical school, and we have still got very good, responsible jobs.
Mm-hmm. So I want to go back to what you've touched on with regards to the choices that were available to you. Given the amount of time that has passed since then, and looking back, would you still make the same choice?
I think the environment has changed. I don't think I would change. I think I would still, I still go to the medical school. Maybe I would not necessarily go into endocrinology the way I did. I probably would take a different path because when I got a scholarship to go and do endocrinology, it was not real endocrinology. I just went to do postgraduate course, and I yet had not made a decision as what I should do. And when I went, I found a very good teacher whom I still look upon as a good mentor. And he was always dedicated to his work. He liked science, he liked research. So I think that's where the motivation started. From the teachers I had right after completing internship. I worked with a researcher who is still, is no longer in clinical practice, but is still around, Professor Orwen, who did quite a lot of work in cancer in Uganda. Then Veronica Kota, whom you have alluded to, my main mentor, who used to say, don't do anything else. Clinical medicine means touch the patient. And I think I still remember that. It is still nice to look at the patients, examine, and come with a diagnosis, and then get into research so that it is still enjoyable work. So that's where the choices came from. If I went back now, if I had a chance to go back and go through, I probably would go straight into clinical medicine, then together with research, looking at endocrinology alone, and not necessarily what is now taking most of my time, and that's public health.
And so, if I hear you correctly, you would still be in the medical profession,
I
engineering.
definitely I would. I
Okay.
definitely would.
Yes. Now you talk about your journey, and at every step you are evoking mentors that you had, people around you that facilitated your training, your education, and your professional life. Can you talk to us a little bit about mentorship and how important it is to you in terms of how it shaped your medical career, but also whether you are also mentoring other people?
I think mentorship is to look at how someone does things routinely, what becomes a routine, and more or less use the same ability to improve your skill. That's what mentorship is about. Look at how things are done routinely and then adopt that and see whether that improves your skill. Now, one of the things that I still would say was a good mentorship is that one, when I worked with the Cancer Institute with Professor Charles Orwain, he would tell us the first thing you do is arrive in the office at least 30 minutes before you go into the ward. And why? Because you need to read every day, dedicated some time to reading. And if you don't read, then it means you're going to become stale. So one of the things I still do, and I still encourage my juniors to do, is to get into their office first and do some reading or prepare for what work is going to be done the following day, that very day. So that you get into, if I'm going to see 3 or 4 patients, even if I don't know who is going to be, my mind is already prepared that I'm actually going to see patients. They may be difficult, they may be simple. Some of them I already know if I've already got them appointments, so that my mind is already prepared. And in that way, my mind is set and is enjoyable. So that is one. And I think it's part of the things that I got. When I left Professor Charles Orwain, I found Veronica Cotta doing the same. I found Professor Gerard Tomkin doing exactly the same, going into the office fast, reading his journals, scanning through them, preparing for his patients before he goes into the ward. The same with my main professor for the PhD. That one was even worse because he would spend about 2 hours before we arrive, and then he would be going through everything he probably left the previous evening. So that's what I think was about mentorship. Then, of course, you pick what is good, and then what you feel is not the nice part of the person, that one you drop aside, because everybody, I think, has his own ways of doing things.
Definitely. And somebody who has worked with you knows that you have taken all those lessons on board in terms of being very diligent and hardworking and available. How do you maintain the balance between your dedication to your work and the time that you put into your work, as well as personal time?
Well, there is one of the things that whoever I work with tells me is you must learn how to say no. That's the most important thing in life. Probably the only thing I really need to learn how to say it nicely. So when you learn to say no, that means that I will take what I think is the best on my side. There are some things you will sacrifice when you want to keep in the same line, to balance what I think I should do. I realized, for example, that I need a little more time for my research. I need to be out of clinical medicine for a while and go into the field to do my public health part of it, the global health aspect of it. Now, is uncomfortable for the hospital practice, and is also uncomfortable for the family at home. But one of the things they understand is that I need to be mentally normal. If I'm not well, then they won't manage me at home either, and neither will they manage me in the hospital. So that's part of the well-being. So if I say tomorrow I'm going for a conference, my dear wife understands, says, "Oh, you are leaving me alone here." I say, "Well, if you want, we can go together, but you've also got another job." So it's somewhere there is something that you'll find that you don't do very well. Like I don't always be at social occasions for a long time. Normally, I will abandon weddings. The weddings here in Uganda take 4 or 5 hours, and I may abandon the wedding, but I think not everybody is going to be the same. So they may not manage to be in the medical school either for 3 or 4 hours. So everybody has a few things they can't do. So that's how we balance.
Yeah. And a very challenging aspect of a doctor's life, especially one that is in a leadership role like yourself, is how to bring all of these different dynamics together in these different domains of our lives together. Can you talk to us a little bit about your leadership style? Because part of the responsibility of mentorship is also included in your, I'll say, your job description, right? As somebody who's leading teams. What is your approach to leadership that you have experienced, and any challenges and any tips that you might have, especially for clinicians that are going into leadership positions?
Yeah, that's very interesting. One thing I don't like is administration. I just don't like it at all. And I've been an administrator once, and that's when I worked in Kenya for a very brief period. I was, by nature of the job, I was the only one, so I became the medical superintendent of the small hospital. But if one looks at my career all throughout, I have evaded being an administrator. I do take on leadership jobs. I still, for example, chair the East African Diabetes Study Group. And with that, the most important thing is, I think, is to listen. Listen what people would like to have. And if one listens, then you'll see that you actually, all you need is listen and get things together. In this way, most things are done. Like the type 1 diabetes we have in the country, coordinating the whole country. Again, is listening. What do people want? How can you actually join them? Because most of the leadership here is not work that you actually do. It's actually delegating the work appropriately. And I think it's all about listening to what they talk and not necessarily replying there and then. Sit down, investigate, examine, and then see. And that's what I think the leadership is all about, listening to what people would want to have.
And these are all the skills that we are very well trained in, actually, as doctors. We are very well trained as doctors to listen, and listen empathetically, to diagnose, and to make decisions and problem solving. Now, you mentioned the aspect of patients as well, and your involvement with patients or concerns with patients. And again, anyone who has interacted with you knows that you very much live and breathe the patient-centered approach, and putting the patient really in everything that you do. For many doctors that I've talked to, there are often certain patient interactions that have been very memorable and that have shaped their understanding and the practice of medicine. Is there one that has left a lasting impact on you?
Yes, I do. I mean, you will meet a patient that you would want to have managed in a different way, for example, and then you find you didn't, you missed a point somewhere, or because the patient cannot afford and therefore he has to do an alternative way. So you do get those situations. But I think, again, the most important thing is to stand back and say, are we able to do everything on us, which sometimes is impossible? And my teacher, Veronica Mary, who was a nun, used to have a nice writing in her room, which she left behind, and I think I'm the one who has it. And she used to read, "Let God give me the light to see what I can do, and the light to see what I cannot do." So that's where medicine actually is. And once one understands that, then things should be easy.
Mm-hmm. Which brings me to the topic of the changes that are happening currently across the world in the medical field. I think, irrespective of where you are, whether you're in South Africa or Uganda or the United States, the medical landscape is changing very rapidly, and more so after COVID-19. To your point, this is where we need to really have a deep understanding of what we can and cannot do. But you've seen many changes in your field, in your career over the last 40 years or so. How do you adapt to new challenges and at the same time remain resilient in the face of change?
Oh, that's very interesting. My advantage is that I have been in clinical research, remained in the medical school to teach as well. So that more or less keeps you abreast of what is going on. However, we now see that quite a lot can be done very quickly. I can make a diagnosis pretty fast. A brain tumor, you suspect it and you'll get an answer in a couple of hours, whereas before you wouldn't. Then there are other things, technology for which will tell you a lot of lies. Predictions, artificial intelligence is coming in. Then there is the Dr. Google, which patients come with, and they come with a diagnosis already and tell you this is what I have. So you have to go down and then literally the basics and tell them, look, I think we still need to go the basics, and I examine. Then he says, no, I think I have this. There are those challenges and which have changed the clinical medicine. But we must understand that in actual fact, generally it's for the better if it's used appropriately. If the clinician goes back to the basics of clinical medicine and takes one A, B, C, D, even when a patient comes and says, I think I've got a brain tumor, what do we do? And you still insist, yes, you have got a brain tumor, but I think I still need to look at your toes. I think I still need to look at your tummy. I need to do a general medical examination. He'll understand why one should not focus just on technology alone, because we know very well that it can go wrong. And secondly, it does not take the human being as a human being. So there are those things there, I think, which technology seems, when it's taken not in full and leaves the clinical medicine out, then it causes a trouble. Unfortunately, we do get areas where some clinicians would want to go straight and use a machine, just like you do with telemedicine only. That's quite good, fine. It was good during COVID. People escaped COVID. But I think we still need to have the human touch. A robot will never practice medicine the same way. That's my belief. The same way as a human being to another human being. A robot will remain a robot. When the batteries run out, they will run out, and so forth. So I think that is, it's a change. It's good, but one must take it in its perspective.
Thank you for that understanding and around the importance of being adaptable as well. And it's comforting to know that you don't feel threatened by the AI. And certainly over the years, you've definitely proved that the human connection is the part of why we became doctors. We wanted to be able to connect and build those relationships with our patients in order to be able to help them. And we build trust also with our patients. I want to just take you back a little bit also with regards to something that you mentioned earlier about your colleagues, many of whom you started with in medical school, but the brain drain basically impacted them and the country really. Can you tell me a little bit or take me through your process, your thinking with regards to why you, given many opportunities that you had, you've studied in Ireland, you've studied in India, why after traveling the world and being able to get opportunities to work elsewhere, you still remained in Uganda?
There are many reasons why I came back. One, that when I love being home. That's number one, and I like being a first class citizen when I'm here. So that is number two. But that wouldn't really bring me back home as such. However, when I went abroad, I had a contract with the hospital where I was doing my internship to return. That was not very binding, but after completing my studies in Dublin, I thought I should actually come and practice. And it was a little bit hard, I must say. It wasn't that easy because you are moving from Europe and you are, you have much more. At the time, we didn't have a CT scan, for example, virtually in the whole country. And, whoever was coming to the hospital with headaches and with suspected pituitary tumor, you would have a CT scan at that time within a week. This time I wouldn't. So there was that difficulty. My feelings were that whichever skill I had gained, if I tried to go the basics, I would probably get to help many more than if I would help when I would be in Europe. My moving to India, for example, going back to do public health as well, was actually for that purpose. I did public health mainly because every time I write a research grant, they would say, but you don't have a public health person here. How will you do the community work? So I said, okay, I'll take 1 year and do public health, and then I see who challenges that again. So that was the reason. But most of the things was really to come back and see how I can help with the skill I would have. If now you asked me, can I go to Europe? And I will tell them yes. If you want me to go to Europe, as long as you let me come back later, I would. I have no problem.
So roots deeply embedded in Ugandan soil. And let's talk about then your legacy, building from that thought. As you reflect back, and it's not often that I'm fortunate enough to have guests that have 40 years plus of medical experience. But looking back, what legacy do you hope to leave behind, both professionally and personally?
I think what my belief has been to have as many endocrinologists in this country as I can. My teacher, who was British working in Ireland, would tell us that the best he can do is introduce us to other people, that knowing people was better than having money. And in that, he would say, well, would be at meetings, and then he says, look at my whole group. They are doing all the research I didn't do. And that's what I would really look at. My dream still, or within Uganda, is still the same. If I can have as many people as many endocrinologists, many people who are pediatric endos. We didn't have any pediatric endo at the time I returned. Pediatricians used to fear children with type 1 diabetes. Now we have 5 endocrinologists, pediatric endocrinologists. So that's the glory I see. And it's nice to see that people have gone through your hands and are actually better than you are yourself. So that's the what keeps me running, what keeps us moving.
And in everything that you're saying, it's not centered around you. It's around the benefits of the patients, your colleagues, as well as the community and definitely the country. So now looking back for young doctors or early career doctors who are just starting out in the profession, looking back in your 40 years of medical practice, what would be your cheat sheet that you would give them for success? What would be the do's and don'ts that would make it a successful medical profession from your experience?
I think what drives a doctor is if he gets a benefit from examining a patient and helping the patient. Not necessarily arriving at a diagnosis, but helping the patient. You know, the best one can get is if you see someone miserable and at the time of the finishing the discussion, the person has a smiling face. That's the best you can do. And, with medicine, that's what I always find, that after seeing a patient, we get a discussion, they are friends. And both of us seem to be happy that what was causing misery has actually been solved by both of us. And I think that's what medicine is about. If one goes into medicine to just make a diagnosis and give a treatment, I think that may be difficult. And I think you'll hate medicine very soon and get burned out. But if you actually get in to help the patient, take an example, a patient with chronic renal failure whom you know you will not be able to do dialysis, he has no money, and then you sit down, you are not going to discuss how he's going to die and so forth, but you are going to discuss how we can actually get better from that situation. What can be done? And if the discussion is about how to improve the problems there, both of you will be happy. None of you is going to get burnt out because there is no money, there is no dialysis, and there won't be a cure for his kidneys, and so forth. I think that's what medicine is about. Medicine is about improving the quality of the person, and both of you benefit. If you can impart that to the patient, and from there you also get the benefit of having delivered the knowledge. I think that's what I would give to the younger people, rather than look at making a diagnosis all the time.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, to focus on the privilege that we have of waking up every day and helping our fellow man. I definitely love that, and I think it's very inspiring. Now, going to retirement, and maybe you will share a little bit with me where you are in that journey. What do you envisage in terms of your life after retirement? You know, they say doctors don't retire, and perhaps what you've mentioned about helping people is not really something that has a cutoff date. But how do you see your life after retirement?
I don't know what retirement will be about, to be honest. I think I'll retire when the brain has said it cannot do statistics anymore. I think most of my time actually I spend it doing statistics. Interesting because that's the subject I love most, and in various ways. So the moment I think when I can't sit down and read a journal or write a paper, and I don't know what I'll do next. Maybe I'll just watch a documentary on research and that sort of thing. But when I stop teaching, most likely I will go into coordinating research. That will be the last bit of my career.
Mm-hmm. So you maintain your legacy of giving back, of teaching, and of building other people. Professor Bandega, is there anything else that you want to add before we close off our interview?
Not much. I think we spanned quite a lot. All I can say is that those who have been listening to me is that not all the roads look as rosy as I have put it. Sometimes you try things and they don't work. And there are other areas where you find that there will be conflicts because what you really want to do, someone else doesn't want it to be done. You may find that financially you don't have what you'll be looking for, and sometimes you look back and it doesn't look that rosy. But as I always say, that hope is what I always look at, and I always quote the late Desmond Tutu that he's a prisoner of hope. And I think hope is where all of us remain in. And hope and faith is what drives the day.
Thank you so much for that optimistic note. Very appropriate to end on. And thank you again for your time, Silver Bahendeka. I'd also encourage the listeners to reflect on this discussion and also consider how they can apply some of the lessons that you've shared with us today to their lives. And that wraps up another insightful episode of Doctors of the Baobab. And I do hope that you found today's discussion both enlightening and empowering. But before we part ways, I'd like to extend a heartfelt invitation to the doctors. If you've been inspired by what you've heard today, and if you're ready to take action towards change in your life, a positive change, you can consider working with me. You can email me, or to learn more about my coaching services, I encourage you to also visit the social media platforms. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss another episode filled with valuable insights and strategies for personal growth. And if you know someone who could benefit from our discussions, be sure to spread the word and also encourage them to tune in. So let's stay connected beyond the podcast. You can share your thoughts, connect with like-minded individuals who are also on their way towards living their personal best lives. Thank you again for tuning in today. And remember, every small step you take towards your goals is a victory worth celebrating. Until next time, keep striving, keep growing, and keep shining bright. Doctors of the Baobab, where medicine meets motivation.